Hello, and welcome to the news. In today's report, we shall be looking at Clegg and his changing opinions regarding tuition fees. Before the 2010 general election, we've heard an awful lot of this.
Broken promises. There have been too many in the last few years, too many in the last 30 years. In fact, our nation has been littered with them, a trail of broken promises.
I really think tuition fees are wrong.
But I want a higher education system accessible to as many people from as many possible backgrounds as possible.
I really think tuition fees are wrong.
First, we would campaign against any lifting of the cap on tuition fees.
I really think tuition fees are wrong.
We want to see tuition fees removed.
I really think tuition fees are wrong.
And so, looking for votes, Clegg and his Liberal Democrat friends signed a pledge. They had this idea that if they all signed this pledge, that students would vote for them. You see, this pledge was going to say that Liberal Democrats didn't believe in students paying fees. That bloody pledge, the bane of his bloody life. That pledge I bet he wish he never fucking signed.
I believe it's time for promises to be kept. I believe it's time for promises to be kept. Our nation has been littered with them, a trail of broken promises. You remember them?
But I want a higher education system accessible to as many people from as many possible backgrounds as possible.
You remember them?
No one won the 2010 general election. In fact, Clegg and the Liberal Democrats did terribly. They came third, a really bad third. But then, because nobody won the election, they had to become a bloody hung parliament. And what happened next was really shocking, because David Cameron, who wanted power and to be Prime Minister more than anybody else on the planet, decided to get into bed with Clegg and the Liberal Democrats. Together they would form a coalition. A coalition of Tories and Liberal Democrats. Christ, could you imagine anything worse? Well, that's when it all started to go wrong for Clegg.
Just imagine what that means. A trail of broken promises. We can do it if we do it together.
His opinions, stance, beliefs, morals, thoughts on students and fee paying for their education has changed beyond fucking belief. The Tories and the Liberal Democrats decided to forget all about the pledge that the Liberal Democrats had just signed a couple of months earlier, and they decided that students were going to have to start paying more fees. Not a little bit more fees, like thousands of pounds more. Up to £9,000 a year fees. So if you're going to go to university and maybe study for 5 years, you could be finding yourself £45,000 in debt by the time you leave university and get your first job. How wonderful. The students of this country felt well and truly shit on, not just by the Tories, mostly by the Liberal Democrats, because it was Nick who had said, trust me, believe in what I say, vote for me and I'll scrap tuition fees. And here he was, licking the arse of the Tories and backing them in these changes to student fees. Well, the shit was about to hit the proverbial fan, because the students of England weren't going to sit back and do nothing. They weren't going to allow the government to make these changes without showing them how they felt about it. The anger felt by students in England was building. They were getting more and more annoyed. And you know what they did? They didn't just sit on their arse and do nothing. They decided to fight back. They decided to take to the streets and in towns and cities up and down England. That's exactly what they did. In the thousands. protesting aside, there was very little that students could do, other than pledge together that they would never, ever, ever vote for Nick Clegg again. So, I hear you ask, what's the point of this new special today? What's the point of me going over old ground about what he's done? Well, you see, today, the 19th of September 2012, guess what Nick Clegg did? The knacker said he was sorry.
I'd like to take this opportunity to put a few things straight. When I meet people around the country, it's obvious that many of you have strong and pretty mixed reactions to some of the things that Liberal Democrats have done in government. Many of you tell me that you're glad that at a time of real economic uncertainty, we put aside our political differences to provide our country with stable leadership. But I also meet people who are disappointed and angry that we couldn't keep all our promises, above all our promise not to raise tuition fees. And to those people, I say this. We made a promise before the election that we would vote against any rise in fees under any circumstances. But that was a mistake. It was a pledge made with the best of intentions, but we shouldn't have made a promise we weren't absolutely sure we could deliver. I shouldn't have committed to a policy that was so expensive when there was no money around, not least when the most likely way we'd end up in government was in coalition with Labour or the Conservatives, who were both committed to put fees up. I know that we fought to get the best policy we could in those circumstances, but I also realise that isn't the point. There's no easy way to say this. We made a pledge, we didn't stick to it, and for that I am sorry. When you've made a mistake, you should apologise. But more importantly, most important of all, you've got to learn from your mistakes. And that's what we will do. I will never again make a pledge unless as a party we are absolutely clear about how we can keep it. I accept that won't be enough for everyone, but I owe it to you to be upfront about it. And I don't believe it should cast a shadow over everything else the Liberal Democrats are achieving in government. When we're wrong, we hold our hands up. But when we're right, we hold our heads up too. We were right to leave the comfort of opposition to face the realities of government. And I know we are fighting for the right things, day in, day out too. Rebuilding our economy to make it strong, changing the tax system to make it fair, defending the vulnerable in these tough times. That's what my party believes in. That's what I believe in. And if we've lost your trust, that's how I hope we can start to win it back.
And me, being a reporter who investigates this kind of news story, would just like to give Nick Clegg a little message. Couple of things, Nick, about your apology. We didn't believe it, we didn't want it, we think it's a load of shit, and we think you jumped into bed with the Tories because you're a power-greedy bugger who only wanted to be on the right side of the House of Commons. You didn't care about Liberal Democrats, and you certainly didn't care about students. And you know what? In the next general election, I'm going to be the first journalistic type reporter to get a diploma and laughing at Deputy Prime Ministers losing their seat. It's to you, Mr. Nick Clegg. You've got egg on your fucking face, and you know what? It's your own bloody fault.
What's the point of Nick Clegg? What's the point of Nick Clegg? What's the point?